Everyone. In this video, I wanted to share a few suggestions and strategies about how to read articles in psychology, research articles that aren't studies, but are review articles. So these are a little bit different in that they don't report the findings of a particular study, but they're more giving a review of a certain area. They might still have tables and figures. They definitely have citations, but they're not kind of the traditional article that has an introduction, a method, a results section, and a discussion. So the first thing I always like to do, regardless of the article, is check out the title, because you can get a lot of information from the title. And so in this one, the costs and benefits of development, the transition from crawling to walking, we have some sort of sense of what this is going to be about. And up here, at the top, you can see it's in child development perspective. So that is the journal title. And this is a very good journal. I also like to make sure I check out who the authors are. And sometimes it's really worth the extra step to Google them, find out what other research they do. So Karen Adolph is a very famous motor development researcher. As is her collaborator, they're both from New York University. And then what I do next is I don't dive right in. I'll take a look through the article as a whole, see the different parts of it, check out how long it is, and check out the different headings. So here, let me see if I can find the annotation tool. You can see the abstract. The abstract is usually about 150 to 300 words where the authors are asked to summarize what is the article about. And so in an empirical research study, an article that reports the findings of a particular study or multiple studies, this will summarize the methods they used, their results, the discussion. But in a review article, it's just kind of a short version of the entire article. So this is something that once I'm done skimming the whole article, I'll go back and read pretty closely because it's going to give me a roadmap of where everything is going. The other thing I always like to check out are the keywords. So you can always find the keywords right after the abstract. And this is used to help journals develop a search strategy. So when you're searching for a particular topic and looking for new research on a topic, so maybe you're looking for research on walking, you can easily find it. And so the keywords give you insight as well into what the article is going to be about. So here we know we have a little bit to do with developmental transitions, motor development, and then head-mounted eye tracking. Sounds pretty fancy. It means that they actually strapped cameras onto the infants' heads. So we know we're going to be covering some really interesting research here. Scrolling down a little bit, you can always find information on the authors, as well as how they were funded. So if this research is funded or not, and the acknowledgements. And so if you're getting involved in research, if you're not an author yet, you still might be actually acknowledged in the acknowledgements, which is pretty cool. And it has information on how to contact the authors too. And then what I like to do next, so I'll come back to the abstract, I like to skim through the article as a whole. Because in a review article, so something that's not empirical findings from a single study or several studies, the headings aren't always introduction, method, results, discussion. So here, the major headings are experienced crawling and novice walking. So something to do with that bridge from crawling to walking. Other headings, they have advantages of walking. So I know that the authors are going to spend some time talking about why kids make that leap to walking. And so this major heading here is advantages of walking. And then these subheadings over here are listing those advantages. And so this is giving my brain an idea of how the article is going to be organized. They're going to spend some time talking about the advantages of walking. And then my guess is they'll probably do the same for crawling too. So kids can go more walking compared to crawling. They can see more. Come back to the figures. They can play more. They can interact more. So again, we're kind of just figuring out what the headings are. And if I'm taking notes, I might actually sketch out these headings in my notes so that I can organize my thoughts. Keep coming down. And then it has caveats. So maybe up in the article, they would have talked a little bit about crawling, but so far we know that the two major headings so far are the benefits of walking and then the author's caveats. They also have a section called conclusions. So this is another good place to spend your time this is where they wrap up their whole argument. And then they have their references. And don't just skip past the references. I always like to look and see who they're citing. And so obviously Karen Adolph is citing herself a lot because she's done a lot in this area. But I like to look at, she's cited herself quite a bit, but I like to look at who else they're citing. So again, a journal article is just one piece of a broader conversation. So who are these authors discussing in their conversation as they're discussing the literature? Okay, so come back to it. So all the way up, this is where I'll go back and I'll spend some time reading the abstract carefully. So this gives me an idea of what the author's central argument is, what research they're going to cover, what they're exactly pitching or proposing. From there, you actually start reading the article. And one of the strategies that really works is when you come across a term that you don't necessarily recognize, spend some time checking it out, especially if it seems like it's going to be a key term. So here there's a footnote from where the authors reference the term affordance. And from a developmental perspective, this actually turns out to be a pretty important term. And so they're highlighting it here and explaining it. And so I might make a specific note about that. So footnotes are still important to check out. As I'm reading, there's always a temptation when you see things like, you're like, uh-oh, statistics, slow down, look and see if you can actually process these. And so don't just skip over it if it's numbers. It's still important to check out. Figures are super, super important. And so somewhere up on the previous page, the authors have referenced figure 1, and then they actually have figure 1 down here. And so in any class you're in, there should be this goal to understand data literacy, being able to interpret information provided in graphical figures. And so the figure caption helps you understand the information that's provided in the figure. And specifically, the figure is supposed to supplement what's in the text. And so when in the text they reference see figure 1, go actually look at figure 1, go back and forth. You can see right here, they say see figure 2. So I'm going to scroll down and spend some time looking at figure 2. What additional information in the figure helps you understand what's in the text? Again, they have figure 3. So this is another example of visualization. Another good strategy when you're taking notes on an article like this is if you're having trouble understanding the figure, make a note to yourself. This is where, reaching out for help, either whether it's a peer or a professor or any other resource, really kind of do that work to see if you can process the figure, especially if it's something a little bit unusual. And the same is true for data tables. This article doesn't have data tables, but spending some time processing what's going on in the table as well. Once I'm done with the article, I'll check out the conclusion with an active perspective of, okay, have the authors really accomplished what they set out to do with their argument? What is their overall point? Where should future research go? The tough thing that no one wants to do when they're done reading an article is not to just wipe it from your brain, but see if you can turn it over or put it away, so minimize the window, and kind of quiz yourself. If you were asked to summarize it in 2 sentences, how would you summarize it? If you were asked to share what the 2 key takeaway points were, could you do that? For an extra bonus, see if you can do that with 1 day's time delay. Of 1 day later after you read something, could you summarize the article, share the important points? So doing those things, which is a form of retrieval practice, recall from memory, will help the information stick in your head longer. So that was a quick version of how to read an article that's not necessarily an empirical article, but more of a review article in psychology.